Good afternoon, and today we have a pleasure to interview, I would say, the celebrity, Dr. Howard Hindin. He is an author of the book GASP about airway health and hidden path to wellness. And he's a practicing dentist, and he's a founder of Foundation for Advancement of Innovating Medicine. And his latest organization, he chairman and co-founder of American Association of Physiological Medicine and Dentistry. And wonderful information about Dr. Hindin. He is in practice for 57 years. So, of course, we want to know the secret of his everlasting youth, and we'll find out today during the interview. And again, thank you very much to our audience. We want to remind you, if you have trouble sleeping or sleep next to the snoring partner, please click the like and share button. This way you can spread the word towards your friends and family and the community. And the reason for my channel, just like Dr. Hindin organization, American Association of Physiological Medicine and Dentistry, my mission on this channel to connect medical and dental community and help people who are struggling with the treatment of sleep and breathing disorders, and kind of make community and put all our knowledge together, because only together we can put all the puzzles of this dangerous condition together and find the answers and help our patients with the treatment. So I encourage you to use our channel as a networking ground to communicate with other health professionals and ask the questions for the people who I interview on the channel. You can put them in the chat box. So good afternoon, Howard.
Hi, Maria. Thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to our time together.
Absolutely. So my first question to you would be, what was the inspiration for this book? I personally read the book several times, and I find a lot of wonderful answers for me, and I want to share them with the audience. So tell us about the inspiration.
So my co-author, Michael Gelb, and I were sitting having breakfast one morning, and we said, we should never have to see the patients, the adults we see, because those problems were there in childhood and in teenager and were not recognized. So he said, let's see what we can do to put ourselves out of business and help solve the problems earlier. Let's start an organization, which AAPMD, which we did, and let's write a book. And that's how, that was the birthplace of GASP.
But talking about that, about your answer, please tell me, in a historical explanation over 57 years of practice, tell me what the historical explanation of sleep apnea epidemic, not like specifically sleep apnea, but I would say sleeping, breathing problem, or just breathing problems. What's your view on that?
Okay, so we're living in a time when we are not as healthy. Our children are less healthy than we are. We're not sleeping as well. There are social issues. We're not eating as well. And eating and sleeping are a perfect storm. When we don't sleep well, we crave more sugar. So we make poorer food choices. And we have more poorer food choices. We don't sleep well. And then we don't sleep well and we don't eat well. We're tired. We don't exercise. And so sleep and breathing, food and diet, exercise, and the stresses of life, those are the basic lifestyle changes that either will make us healthy or make us sick. And we're making much more poorer choices that are leading to all the chronic diseases that we have.
Tell me why, and I like how you put the historical perspective on that answer when we had a conversation. Why we're making a poor health choices? What's that restaurant culture? Or, I don't want to call fast food because some of it people don't consider fast food. What's the restaurant culture really doing to us? Like me personally, I do most of the time, I do home cooking. What's so like, I would say media or I don't know, lifestyle we're lead us to that choice?
So first of all, for thousands of years, as we evolved, the biggest problem was there wasn't enough food. and so that it was okay if we ate, and there was more food in spring, summer, and fall. So we ate so that we can live off the fat that we built. But now it's food all the time, and uh, our ancestors learned to distinguish between what was healthy and poisonous by what was sweet was healthy, and what was bitter was poisonous. And so the food industry uses added sugar in order to uh, get us to eat things that may not be good for us, but help sell their their products. You know, if you get up in the morning, the first thing you do, you have a glass of orange juice. It's sweet. If you brush your teeth first, it's bitter. Why is that? Because there's sweetener in the toothpaste, and so that if we're used to getting extra sweetener in our foods, then eating vegetables isn't going to taste good. It's going to taste bitter. When most fresh vegetables are really sweet, you know. And we were talking earlier that when I was a kid, if we ate out maybe a half a dozen times on special, that was a big thing. And now people go to the list of restaurants by their telephone rather than their refrigerator when they prepare dinner. Where are we going to get takeout from tonight? And so we've lost that connection with our food, and we've lost that connection with our sleep. We take our devices to bed. We have televisions in the room. We have a clock with an LED light. We don't treat these very important things of our life as really important components.
I would like to ask you to share with our audience that story about selection of food with your grandma. You know, the food connection, we don't talk much on my channel about that, but I find it so psychologically important. I think that was a beautiful experience, how food was selected when you were a child.
So we lived in the same apartment building with my grandparents. So my job was to go shopping with my grandmother, and so she taught me how to shop. They had the first supermarket, the first A&P was built in the neighborhood when I was growing up. And she said, never go in there, because if they put food in a package, they're trying to hide something. She wanted to be able to see the food. So vegetables were out on display in the vegetable store. In the grocery store, the butter was cut from a big piece of butter, and the eggs were put in a box where the grocer held them up to candle them to make sure there was no blood clots or anything in there. And then we went to the fish store, said, you got to look at the eyes of the fish. Make sure
I love it.
If the eyes are cloudy, it means that the fish is old. And said, you have to let the grocer or the fish place know that you're a really sharp, smart customer, because then they won't give you the inferior products, because the health of your family depending on getting the best food. How many people today do that and know the quality?
I would say zero. Who see the eyes of the fish? People see final sushi.
How do people determine quality? They read the box, and the box was written by the people who are making the food. You know, supplies all your nutritional needs. You know, that's not how we were taught to find food. We were taught to go and experience, have a relationship with our food. Yeah.
You know, I love it. I think it's such a foundational change in the society. And, you know, I'm all for progress and for innovation, and I'm crazy about innovation, but I think that's not a positive change. And I really want to turn the clock back. So let's go back to your practice. I would like to ask you, you do a lot of temporomandibular joint and, you know, work related to sleep apnea. And tell me, how you define the relationship? I want to talk about that triad you describe in a book, how you treat the syndrome, but in the same time, I want you to define relationship between joint and sleep apnea, and what are connections and the potential impact. I know it's a long question, but it's all related to that.
Okay, so first of all, apnea is an airway problem. Apnea means that you're actually stopping breathing, but there's a whole continuum of airway problems, from arousal to snoring to uh, airway resistance. It doesn't matter because the physiological changes in the body are exactly the same. Our sympathetic nervous system, we become more adrenalized because we're defending our airway against an attack, against its collapse. So when I was writing the book, and as I told you before with Michael Gibb, I said, Michael, what percentage of people with TMJ do you think have an airway problem? He said, wow, it's got to be at least 50%. And every time we met, I kept, what do you think now? And eventually we got to the point where we believe it's like 100%. And anybody who's out there who has either has a TMJ problem or practices TMJ, do a little research of your own, see how your breathing changes. And if you move your jaw into a better position, you move your jaw forward, you put something between your teeth where you don't have pain, I will bet that you breathe better. So it's only almost 100%. You can't distinguish the two. The problem is when you're treating airway or you're going to make an oral appliance, if somebody also has a TMJ problem, you have to identify the TMJ problem, because if you don't, then it's sort of a TMJ problem that's hiding beneath the surface, and you give them a sleep appliance, and then all of a sudden they begin to have TMJ symptoms. Well, then you caused it because they didn't know they had it before. So one of the things that needs to be done, every practitioner every dentist doing a sleep appliance needs to be able to do a really good TMJ screening, and that has to be treated as part of the sleep problem.
I like that. That's a very comprehensive approach. So tell us, how you define that airway centric position for the appliances you make?
So a lot of the position is based on the position of the condyle of the lower jaw in the socket of the other jaw, which is a structural problem. We look more at function. Airway centric means, what is the position where somebody breathes the best? What we call in our practice, what is the physiological best position? And the way we do that, we use certain monitoring equipment. The best way to describe that is, if you're in an emergency room or somebody's in an emergency room, the first thing they do, they monitor their vital functions, heart rate, breathing, oxygen saturations, and you can see all the monitoring going on in the background. That's what we use. And so when we can find the optimal physiological functioning position, heart rate slows down, the respiration rate slows down. There's a better balance between the autonomic nervous system, sympathetic and parasympathetic. And sometimes people just, when they get to that spot, that change, everything relaxes. They're in that wonderful sweet spot. The little waves of heart rate and respiration rate are now in sync. It's like a beautiful symphony being played. Everything is in alignment, and it's like a racing car that has been tuned up. Everything is working right in alignment, ready to go on the track and win the race.
Yeah, I like it. It sounds like a dream. So I would like to ask you your question about daytime appliance. You describe in your book about how airway-centric position in appliance we imply to the appliance can improve athletic performance. And tell us a story about that, champion.
Okay.
With your help.
So obviously, if somebody is not breathing well at night, they may not have apnea during the day, but they're not going to be breathing right during the day. And one little cute tip for your listeners is, people who sigh a lot, that's a breathing problem. Sighing is when people they're distracted and they forget to breathe, and they take a deep breath to catch their breath. So finding the right position and holding that position in the right position, I don't care what appliance you use, as long as you have that right position. So we do a lot of webinars. We have over 200 webinars in our AAP&D library. We did one last week with a 25-time world skeet shooting champion. So a skeet shooting champion is with a shotgun has to shoot 2 targets within under 4 seconds because they come from different directions. And so he wanted to improve his performance. Now we're taking a champion, and he was able to reduce his reaction time by almost a half a second. And you can, anybody who's an AAPM member can go and watch the video. They were also throwing things at him while he was shooting with the appliance to distract him, yelling, and he never missed the target because he was just in that sweet spot. We also had patients who were on SWAT teams, snipers on SWAT teams. And when do you squeeze the trigger? You squeeze the trigger between heartbeats. And so if you can breathe better and breathe deeper, your heart rate slows down. Now there's more time between heartbeats, so you can perform better.
Wow. That's...
I'll tell you an interesting story. So my son treated somebody on one of the SWAT teams in Westchester County, and he came in the next time he came in with this target and showed all the bullseye and said, look what you did for me. And all the patients in the waiting room were cringing. Like nobody brings a target into a waiting room, but he was so impressed by how his performance increased.
So I think it's really promising information for people who want to improve the sport performance or performance in life as well. So I would like to ask you, I know your organization, and I highly recommend my listeners, professional, to visit AAPMD website and become part of that wonderful organization, would share the mission with my channel, connecting medical and dental community and find answers to the difficult questions. I would like to ask you about population, what's kind of overlooked about the young, slim females. Those, I would say, people, they don't, it's kind of like a stigma. They don't even, a lot of sleep physicians don't even meet the population of these patients. They usually complain on depression, on anxiety, brain fog, tiredness. What's your approach towards treating that population, and what advice you can give it to the physician and patients in the same time?
So a little bit about our organization. We believe that if breathing and sleep is so important, everybody deserves the right to be to breathe better. But our population is not the same. Men and women are different. Women don't have a lot of apnea. Dr. Guilleminault, who came up with the whole AIH thing, said the worst thing he ever did for the sleep community was to create this scoring system, because people have all sorts of sleep problems, and it doesn't have to be how many times you stop breathing. So women tend to suffer from anxiety, depression, and fatigue. They go and have a sleep test. Sleep test says, well, you really don't have apnea, so you don't have a sleep problem. And so they end up going to an endocrinologist, a thyroid problem, getting medication for sleep, for anxiety, for depression. And what does that do? Almost all of those medications make sleep worse. And so they're in this downward spiral of health because nobody recognizes they have a problem. So part of what we need to do is to raise awareness that if you have a sleep problem, it could just be arousals. Because if you are going to stop breathing, you may be unsuccessful in preventing that and have apnea, but you may be successful and you'll have an arousal, so you don't spend enough time in really good sleep. And women have to be treated different. Children have to be treated differently. And our underserved population of people who live in poor socioeconomic conditions, their sleep is going to be affected too. We have to have an answer for everybody.
Yeah. I would like to ask you, that might be a hot question, like important question for people. You also mentioned that in a book. What connection you saw between cancer and sleep disorder breathing?
So Andrew Guyton, who wrote the textbook of physiology years ago, most famous physiology textbook said all ailments are related to a lack of oxygen at a cellular level. All that we are, everything that helps all our cells of our body work together, are mitochondria that take the oxygen and the nutrients and produce the ATP energy. It's the most efficient energy machine in the world. And so if we're not getting enough oxygen, our cells can't function properly. And our brain, whose sole function is to ensure our survival, says, I'm not getting enough oxygen. What am I going to do? Let's find another way to metabolize our food. And so it creates an environment that allows cancer cells to function. It's not only cancer. Dale Bredesen, who wrote the book The End of Alzheimer's, who's reversed over 500 cases of Alzheimer's, feels the number one factor is oxygen desaturation. Every time you have an oxygen desaturation below 95, 94%, night or day, that's an insult to the brain. And you have insult to the brain every day, week after week, month after month, for decades. It takes decades in order to develop Alzheimer's. So it's the same for Alzheimer's, cancer, heart disease, diabetes. The conditions that will lead to that are there in childhood. And all of us who are treating Airway have the ability to prevent that. So we have to do a really even better job of getting the message out, like you're doing through your podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My last question to you would be, what practical advice you can give to individuals who suffer from temporomandibular joint pain? How they should seek appropriate treatment and diagnosis?
Well, first of all, you want to be your own best healthcare advocate. You can say, do I just have a TMJ problem? Or do I have an airway problem? Do I know? Let me find a practitioner who's going to look at both. It could be a dentist, it could be a physician, it could be a myofunctional therapist, but get information so that you can ask the right questions, just as you would if you were buying a car or an appliance. You want to make sure that you get the full and complete treatment.
Thank you very much. It was such a wonderful to spend time with you, Dr. Hindin. And last question, please tell us your secret of everlasting youth. You can announce your age, and I think you are inspiration to me, and I'm sure to a lot of my listeners.
I never have a day where I don't want to get up and go to work. I've been practicing 57 years. And one of the joys is I know I have the ability to change people's lives. I don't fix teeth. I don't make appliances. I listen to people's stories. I help change lives, whether I'm working the office, I'm working through the organizations. You can make a difference. I have dozens of patients who've ended up going to dental and medical school because of my inspiration. And so life needs to be meaningful. And if your life is meaningful, you never get old.
Thank you very much. Life needs to be meaningful. And I think on that very philosophical note, we really appreciate your time. Thank you.